travel very far, and it just kind of worked out convenience-wise that he's able to come today. So we're really lucky to have him. When he was 16, he started a Bitcoin mining company, and it became the largest one in existence. Are you like 20 now?
21.
21, okay, so same age as like a lot of people here. And yeah, he made like $1 million, and from my research, like kind of things happen, you learned a lot of lessons. Hopefully you have a really good, I'm sure, good story to tell us today. And yeah, we're really lucky to have him, so we can welcome him to the class.
Hey guys. So I just like a free-form kind of thing. Like I've told my stories like a couple different groups of people, and I found when entrepreneurs are the ones listening, then they get most used out of it if we kind of do a little bit of Q&A kind of in the middle of it. So yeah, if you guys have any questions at any point, just feel free to just like raise your hand and we'll just fit them in. And the story will kind of evolve like that. So yeah, when I was 16 years old, so basically I'd just like to get a kind of a consensus, like who here knows about Bitcoin, like that it exists. I imagine everybody. And then who knows how it works. Like, okay, like, yeah, cool, half. So yeah, I guess, so yeah, Bitcoin mining is the verification of transactions in the Bitcoin network. And that's just the brief description of like what actually I built computers that did. So when I was 16, I didn't have much money. I really wanted to get into this new space called Bitcoin because I thought the potential for transactions without borders, without fees, without any kind of that thing was like completely interesting. And just like a monetary system that's completely separate from the federal government without any of that corruption and control that goes along with it. Those things like liberty and freedom just really have always appealed to me throughout my life, and I think when I was that young, I just kind of saw this money system as something that could really liberate a lot of people from the kind of like debt slavery that we're born into as Americans being, or anybody in a country that's forced to use debt-based fiat currency. So yeah, I saw a huge amount of potential in that. And I just wanted to get involved in that however I could, and I found about Bitcoin mining, which I could just like, I figured I could run this program on my computer which could actually generate Bitcoins, and that's through Bitcoin mining, which is how Bitcoins are created. And yeah, I started doing that, and I started seeing that it was making a little bit of money, which was kind of cool, so I wanted to reinvest all my money into that. And I wanted to buy graphics cards. Graphics cards are just like a piece of the computer which can do like stuff for video games. So lots of people who have video games know what a graphics card is. It like plugs into like a desktop computer and enhances the graphics performance. And it turns out that that chip on that card can actually also be used for Bitcoin mining like very, very effectively. So a couple of us who were in this kind of Bitcoin mining space at the time figured that out and started writing an algorithm that could like use this GPU for mining. So then instead of like having a whole room like this big full of normal computers for Bitcoin mining, we could just have like one GPU that could do that like 100 times faster than a huge room full of computers, which gave us this huge competitive edge. And then eventually we open sourced it and let other people start experimenting with that stuff because we had found out we had a new technology called FPGAs. So this is when I started coming to San Francisco and designing my own hardware for Bitcoin mining. And to do this, I needed money, so I went online and I basically just made like a post on the Bitcoin forum. I was like, hey, like I know I can do this. I know this will work out. Like, who's down to like help out? And right at the time, I was like 16 years old, so I was like, I had no idea, no business education whatsoever, and I was like completely ignorant of this kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, yeah, I think it makes sense. I'll give you guys 90% of the profit, and I'll keep 10% of the equity for myself. So yeah, like it was a completely like not-for-profit endeavor. And it turns out that like I probably could have raised money from a more formal place and kept the other proportion instead. So yeah, it turned out though that the margins on this business I was running were over 90% though. Wow. So within the 10% that I was keeping for myself, I was actually able to cover all the expenses, which is the way the initial thing was structured. Yeah, so that went on for a little while. We were able to make some money, buy some more hardware that other people were designing, build it ourselves, and then I realized that the hardware other people were selling was actually like less profitable than what we could build ourselves. So then that's how I raised money. It was just $12,000 at first to come out here and basically get started with designing some FPGAs. And that $12,000 actually like grew very, very quickly through our first iteration of hardware came out like in a month and a half, which is like ridiculously fast. Just found like a really, really talented developer and worked with him down in Fresno. And yeah, so within that first month, I went up to like, I think it was like somewhere around $90-something thousand worth of Bitcoins that we had generated. So we were like, okay, like, we should reinvest this into ASICs and stuff like that. So then I found a partner, and I found this guy like on the internet who was also into Bitcoin mining, and we spoke completely anonymously with each other, just like over Skype. All I knew was his Skype username, and it was called I Needed a Username. Maybe some of you guys know him. His name's Michael Gao. And it turns out after after he had sent me like a huge amount of money, like he sent me $800,000 worth of Bitcoins to come out here and design this stuff without ever meeting each other, without any formal contract, without anything. And I'd never met the guy, but eventually we started doing this whole business together and designing these ASIC chips, application-specific integrated circuits at a firm in San Francisco, and at a foundry in Taiwan. And yeah, so he sends me this stuff without any kind of contract or anything. And eventually I meet this guy, and he's actually a year younger than me. And I met him like at the airport for this like Bitcoin conference in Miami. And yeah, we met each other, we were kind of just exchanging notes. He was telling me how he had made all this money and how he'd stayed completely anonymous. I was the first person that he'd ever told like in person without his like internet pseudonym that he's made this money. So we had a lot of trust for each other pretty much right away. And so then we decided we'd start doing our own thing together. And yeah, so it just kind of went from there. I learned a lot. Turns out like a lot of the money that we invested in this company in San Francisco was like really, really badly squandered. The company was doing it was really bad. We had this policy, we had this agreement with them where we could get our money back within, I think, if we had let them know within 6 months. But basically this CEO of this company called Hashfast in California was basically just like taking their whole company on retreats to the Bahamas, like chartering jets and stuff like that with this money we'd given them. So we made the money back, and we like through the hardware that we had developed like with these guys. But it turns out that like they'd really breached the contract by spending a lot of the money on things that were just completely unnecessary, which was specified in the contract. So I learned a lot about like managing money and actually like understanding the power that comes with writing a contract with somebody and never kind of letting them go outside of that and never trusting anybody's word. If they say like, oh, we were going to like, yeah, we'll push this a couple months out and we'll like double your order size and stuff like that. If it's not specified in a contract, then like obviously, I mean, that was just a stupid like teenage mistake, I think. And so yeah, after that, yeah, the company just kept running and running, and we upscaled from like, it started out in my living room, and then it moved out into like a garage in our backyard, and then I was like wiring power in from the neighbors, and then we expanded to a warehouse in Montana, where I went to university for a semester and then had to drop out because I was running this company. It just took like all my time and more. And yeah, and then eventually we were like, we'd grown to a size where we were able to afford like a warehouse in Washington State next to a hydroelectric dam where the power was super, super cheap. And yeah, it just kind of worked like that from there. And then more and more competition like started coming in, and a lot of people like that were actually like completely trained like hardware engineers and ASIC designers came in and started like competing in this industry with us. And then we kind of like lost our edge because a lot of people were moving to China where the electricity and like the staff is even cheaper. And it was actually like got to a point where it would have been immoral to continue because the way they were like paying people in China, we were paying our data center techs like 80 grand a year in Washington, but in China they were paying them literally in like alcohol and cabbage and a place to sleep. So just because of that, like we couldn't compete, and like I refused to like pay people that way because it's like pretty much slave labor. So yeah, we had to shut down the business because we wouldn't be competitive like mining bitcoins in the US. So today, all Bitcoins are mined in China by like 3 or 4 different companies, and like the board of directors could sit down at like a table that size and like make decisions about the whole Bitcoin network. So it's lost a lot of its utility as a democratic monetary platform because it's so centralized in its control now. So when that happened, I decided to liquidate the company, and like a lot of investors. So I guess I should say the way that we raised money was a thing called equity crowdfunding, which is popular now, but back then like wasn't really a thing. Nobody really defined it. There wasn't like a platform where you could go and do it. So it was pretty like unregulated and in like an SEC gray area, Securities Exchange Commission. So for like the SEC to like approve like a publicly traded company, usually you have to pay them $1 million fee, which I didn't have when I was 16. So yeah, we just kind of like said like, okay, we're gonna do this without any registration or legal protection, and see how it goes. So I had to remain like really in like a quiet position, not advertising the company to anybody, not being really out there about anything, like turning down the interviews from like Forbes and Wall Street Journal and stuff like that, because if the SEC like got us under their eyeglass, I thought like I definitely could have gone to jail for a while, and I had no idea about like the legal implications of what I was doing until like, years after I started it. So like at one point like the founder of Bitcoin actually said like, hey man, you should probably shut down your company, you might go to jail. I was like, damn. So that was pretty concerning, but yeah, eventually it turned out like one of the best financial lawyers in New York City called Marco Santori. He was like extremely helpful. He usually charges like $4 or $5 grand an hour, but he was just like, yeah, Garett, I think it's cool what you're doing. So yeah, I'll just help you out for free. So he's like, I could just like call him whenever. So one time like a bunch of people. So after I closed down the business, like a lot of the investors were angry because even though it was in the contract from the very beginning that I was allowed to liquidate the business to whomever I wanted to at any time for any price, meaning I could have sold it to myself for $1 if I wanted to. When I liquidated it for like the best prices I could get, the investors were still super mad, even though they had made like massive returns, because there was so much potential for more. So like one huge takeaway from that whole experience was like choose your investors extremely wisely, because if you just like if you do the opposite of that, just let random people invest, then it can be really terrible, because like a lot of them were really awesome and helpful and continue to be mentors to me. And some of them actually threatened my life at one point, just because they're so crazy, so in this kind of like egocentric attitude that yeah, I don't know what it was, but yeah, it was crazy. So I was in a lot of like, I felt like I was in a lot of danger because somebody had threatened my life. They said that they're gonna spend $500,000 on putting me in jail, which was like super concerning because of what I had done might have been illegal. So I like fled to Europe, and at one point I was like in Paris, and I called Marco and I was like, hey man, like, how's it going? Because he was reviewing like everything I'd ever done, which was super nice of him, and just like checking whether it was legal, and it was like still a gray area. So he was actually calling regulator friends of his, and like saying like, hey, what do you think is gonna happen here? Is Garett okay? So then he calls me back like a day later, and he's like, all right, man, you're good. Like, I was like, sweet. Yeah, so he's one of the coolest people I know for sure. And yeah, so then like that whole experience was just like absolutely crazy. I've learned a lot from it, and so when I liquidated the company, I also like was not good at investing the money I had made. Because I was 18, so, and I don't know, I should have like asked for advisors and stuff like this, but I just didn't know that mentors and advisors and financial advisors really existed. So I started out with a good bit of money, and then it was all in Bitcoin now. And then Bitcoin went from like peak value of $1,200, which is where it was when I exited the company. And then Bitcoin crashed down over the next, I think, 8 months to $250-ish. Right now it's back up at like 640. Which is cool, but yeah, definitely like lost a lot of money on the way down. So like diversification of assets once you get them is like very key. And yeah, are there any questions at this point? Yeah.
So when you have all this money in Bitcoin, how do you convert it to like money that you can reinvest in your company with, or like
With
money
or
you can
without
spend?
tax implications?
Either both.
So there was like a huge thing because nobody really wanted to deal with Bitcoin because a lot of people's like accounts and stuff were flagged by the SEC and IRS and stuff. So like a lot of people, it was like kind of a crazy time, and I was kind of involved in it too, but people would just do like massive like cash transfers. Like you just meet somebody in a city somewhere and you just like send them Bitcoins and they just give you like a bunch of cash. And that was like the way that you would trade Bitcoins before it became more regulated. And technically, if you trade more than $10,000 in cash with anybody, you have to report it to the IRS, but people just weren't doing that. But yeah, it's kind of risky because if you do that with a police officer, then you go to jail. It's like a felony. So yeah, it's kind of sketchy. So yeah, got out of that as fast as I could and helped start an exchange. And now the most popular exchange in the US is called Coinbase out of San Francisco. It's where like most people go to buy and sell coins, and you can do up to like $100,000 a day. So yeah, it's super easy now. They just transfer it to your bank the next day. Yeah. Yeah. Could we? Yeah. Sure.
Can you explain Bitcoin a little bit?
Sure. So how Bitcoin works is does everybody know it's like a peer-to-peer digital currency that doesn't have any kind of centralized authority and lives entirely in the application that is Bitcoin. So Bitcoin itself is like an application that can run on any computer. It can run on a phone or a server or whatever, and then Bitcoin is also the payment network between all of those computers. So for instance, I can send you money and somebody else can run a Bitcoin miner that actually verifies that transaction. So Bitcoin is this huge network. It's a peer-to-peer network. It's called Bitcoin because of BitTorrent. It uses a lot of like the ideology behind BitTorrent. And yeah, so because of that decentralized peer-to-peer nature, it's not able to be stopped by any centralized government that can't just like completely cut off the internet. So that's like one of the huge reasons I thought it was such a powerful space and a powerful technology to be a part of, because it's just like it's unstoppable, just like you can't stop us from downloading music for free.
So if its value is found in the next application which it's used, how is it controlled by those 4 people in China you were talking about?
Yeah, because Bitcoin mining is the verification of all the transactions, and these people control the majority of the Bitcoin mining network. And basically, if you control over 50% of the Bitcoin mining network, you can basically veto other transactions. And that's kind of a flaw that was maybe accidentally built into Bitcoin. So basically, the idea was that the mining power would be completely distributed among everybody who used Bitcoin. But it turns out that it's just not the case. Yeah.
What are you up to like these days?
So yeah, I spent the last like year riding my motorcycle around Europe, which was great. And I just like wanted to like learn about cultures and stuff, and also just like have a good time. But I was also kind of running away. I really wanted to like decompress after this whole like business and kind of like a traumatic experience of people threatening my life over it. So it's kind of just like a decompression phase. Learned a lot, met a lot of cool people, lived in Berlin for a while, started doing like consulting for venture capital firms and just like stuff like that, like choosing whether they would invest in like Bitcoin and blockchain companies. And then about a month and a half ago I moved to Boulder, Colorado, and decided to like plant roots there. And it was, yeah, it's a great spot. So now I'm working on starting an energy consortium among like everybody who owns power grids around the world. To integrate blockchain technology into that, to make it more efficient, to promote sustainable energy use. Because I found that like blockchain is like my talent that I've got through running this company, and sustainable energy is my passion. So it's a good convergence between those two things. I'm pretty stoked about it. Partnering with the Rocky Mountain Institute starting in January, we're going to build this worldwide consortium to like implement that. So yeah, I'm stoked.
What is blockchain?
Blockchain is the back end of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is this payments network, and it lives on the first blockchain. Have all you guys heard like blockchain technology and like it's really popular? Okay, maybe not. Maybe it's just in like the finance world that like everybody's talking about. But but the blockchain is just it's kind of boring really, but it really has a lot of like cool implications. It's just like a database that's immutable that can't be changed between like a lot of different computers. And you can use that for trustless transactions, and you can make smart contracts. You can literally make contracts that evolve based on real world events, which is something that's going to save so much like clerical boringness and yeah. Yeah. So I guess I wrote down some points. A couple more points I could mention. So yeah, there's like a lot more things I could touch on, but I guess we should figure out what would be most helpful for you guys. Do you guys have any kind of like genre or like space that is like most interesting? Because I could go and I could like talk about like contracts and like how I like did that. I could talk about like meetings with like executives and like traveling around and dealing with people, or like.
I was gonna actually ask you to touch on that with the relationships with your investors.
Yeah.
That when they were upset at you when you were selling the company, or liquidating the company.
Yeah.
What did that look like? How'd you navigate it? How'd you come to terms with it? You talk to some of them still?
Yeah.
Cut off completely from them?
Some of them like I'm very gladly cut off completely with, and some of them I'm very gladly still connected with and still have really great relationships with.
Right.
Ultimately, if I had gotten to know people before the investment, then I think that there wouldn't be any kind of the negative side of those things. You know, I think I would want to like continue investing, continue dealing with all of these original investors. So yeah, like the whole process for saying that we're going into liquidation was basically me just explaining like, hey guys, it's literally immoral to continue. It's immoral to remain competitive. So yeah, I mean, some people got that, and those are the people that I would deal with in the first place if I got to know people. But some people were just like, no, there's so much money to be made, we don't care. So I think you can really screen a lot of those people out in just initial meetings and stuff like that. And then since moving to Boulder, I've met so many amazing investors that are just completely like focused on empathy and the heart, and just really wanting positive change, and just really, there's this huge like give first mentality there, which I really appreciate. Yeah.
Did you feel like your age helped you, like made you stand out and made you unique, or did you feel like it gave you less credibility and like people respected you less? And then also, like how did you learn these skills to do this? Like how come anyone couldn't just do this? And yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah, sure. So it's definitely like a double-edged sword on the being young thing. Because when we were this like 17 and 16-year-old couple of guys walking around this conference in Miami, and then people started learning that like we had the biggest Bitcoin mining operation. They started like really liking that, and like people really like gravitated toward us, and I think it's a huge asset. And then dealing with people more on the business side of things, it was really cool with some of them who had like, I think, good hearts. They were like, oh, okay, you guys are young, we'll mentor you, we'll kind of like help you out along the way as we're engaging in business together, because we realize you have a lot to learn. And then other people were like, oh, these guys are young, they don't know what they're doing, we'll just take advantage of them. So we lost a lot of money because of that. So yeah, it definitely goes both ways, but I think if young entrepreneurs are very cautious in who they deal with and get a good set of advisors that they really trust, to kind of like screen people with them, then a lot of that can be avoided. I just didn't know that at the time, unfortunately. Yeah. And the second part?
Oh, like how did you learn these skills?
Yeah. So basically, instead of paying attention in high school, I just pulled out my laptop and learned about how computers were built. And that was really what was way more interesting to me. It was like the computer to me was like a portal into a different world. And that allowed for this kind of escape from this really boring education system in northern Idaho that I really was not benefiting from. So yeah, after I'd started the business, eventually, I got in trouble my sophomore year in high school for computer hacking, allegedly. And so I was in like in-school detention, one class period every day for a semester with like the vice principal and the disciplinary principal, so I became really good friends with them, playing like this iPad game with them every day. And so basically like eventually I was able to like have my laptop out during class and have my cell phone out because everybody knew that the principal would just give me my stuff back if the teachers took it, because it wasn't allowed to like have a laptop in school at the time. So I was able to like run the business and learn a lot on my own because of that, really. And yeah, because I knew a lot about computer hardware and stuff like that. Like I was on like the first robotics team when I was in high school and stuff like that. I learned a lot about computer hardware that way. So I was definitely passionate about what I could do with computers, and because of that passion of just learning every day through just experimentation, like coming home after school and like building the stuff that I learned how to build when I was at school because of my laptop. That was like my like competitive edge, I guess. That's why, yeah, that skill set was definitely necessary in starting the company.
What were your goals going into it? Like in the very beginning? Did you know what you were getting into, or like where you would end up?
It was just to have fun. Yeah, I think that's how the best businesses are started. Like I talked to a lot of like successful people, and they're just like, yeah, I just like, it's either like I wanted to have fun or I wanted to solve this problem that really bothers me, that will make my life better. Yeah, so mainly it was just like, I don't have money for these cool computers, I want money for these cool computers. let's mine Bitcoins. Yeah. Then, so yeah, during the Bitcoin days, I think there's this really interesting thing that happened. So are you guys familiar with like the concept of a Ponzi scheme? So there's this thing that actually was also really nice for starting this company, because there's this actually like huge Ponzi scheme going on in the Bitcoin world, and so that's why all these people had all this like artificial extra money. So basically, Bitcoin itself is not a Ponzi scheme, despite like what our grandfathers and grandmothers might think. It's well, mine at least for a little while. So basically this Ponzi scheme was running and everybody had all this extra money in the Bitcoin space, so that was a huge reason why I was able to receive that much investment at the beginning, so that was another like good timing thing. And then after that Ponzi scheme was realized and kind of deflated, then people were looking for like more stable and secure investments that actually like had a business model, so then a lot more people started wanting to invest in my company. So it was kind of like doubly beneficial from that like negative thing that was happening in the space at the time. And since then, I've been like, since in the past like 2 weeks, I've been getting like 2 job offers a week on like blockchain specific stuff, and it's usually been like 1 a month or like 3 a month for the past like year or so. But now it's just becoming like all the time that like people are like wanting to work on blockchain related stuff, and like banks can use it to save a lot of money in their space, and like law firms can use it to automate contracts, and like those are the 2 like boring things that I'm definitely trying to avoid, so that's why I'm getting into energy.
Do you ever plan on going back to school?
I've thought about it a lot actually. I was like really, really close to going, Berkeley was one of my choices actually. I got accepted to Berkeley, but I went to Montana State because I was in love, and that's where my girlfriend went. But going back to school, I don't know. I think there's like a lot to benefit from it, and actually I think what I want to do is more in like a specific niche that I couldn't learn as well in school, which is making the energy grid more sustainable. And I think I'll learn that better through working with this nonprofit, Rocky Mountain Institute. They're like over 150 people, have offices all over the world, operate on $30 million a year, and like, so like they're big and knowledgeable and connected. And I think that experience will be my school for the next year or so, and I'll learn a lot. And then after that, I'll reevaluate and see. But right now I'm actually going to a small social entrepreneurialism incubator, where they're focusing a lot on like teaching social entrepreneurialism and a lot of like personal development stuff as well, which I think is awesome. So that's kind of like an alternative education that I'm getting right now. Yeah, but main school, I don't know. Yeah. So,
What did your parents think of all this, especially when you were 16 and just a teenager doing all this, big thing?
yeah. So I was actually really. The whole time I was actually really scared that people would think of me differently if they learned that I had money. So I was lying to my parents at first about the whole thing. I said that like, yeah, I wasn't making any money, and like, so that's why they were always pushing like, okay, like you need to go to college, you can't run your business, no, why are you dropping out, like, so yeah, it was actually like really, really destructive on my relationship with my mom, because I wasn't transparent about my financials, and then she wasn't transparent about hers, and then I don't know, I felt like they should be I don't know. So after a while, I decided to like open up about all this and just like come clean with like absolutely everybody and say like, okay guys, like this is what I'm doing, this is, and then everything was of course much better. My whole notion that people would like treat me differently if they didn't have money was totally correct, but ultimately it's way more beneficial to just be completely honest and transparent with everybody you're dealing with, no matter the consequences, I think. And I think there are like very few circumstances where like lying is more beneficial in the long term. So, yeah.
How did people treat you differently?
There's this like way more people want to be your friend right away. And so then it's like really, really hard to figure out who actually wants to be your friend for you. And that's something that I really struggled with for a long time. It's just like yeah, just like, and then eventually I've learned to just like generally, like I don't know, I talk to people about this whole experience like after I get to know them pretty well, but I never like open up like a new relationship with somebody by saying like, oh hey, by the way, like, yeah, whatever. So yeah, it's definitely actually like changed the perception people have of like me, and like, yeah, I don't know, I think it's just something that you have to deal with, but I haven't really, I should probably reflect on that a bit more actually, because like, yeah.
Do you think that money at any point like changed your original like motivation to just have fun? Like when you're deep into it, did it change at all?
Yeah, I think it did, and I definitely did, and I learned a lot from that, and I'm definitely never going to go back there again. But at one point I was so committed, and this was like a huge flaw of mine for a lot of my life, was like putting others like miles ahead of myself in like my prioritizing. So I put all of these investors like way ahead of myself, and so it was really like, it was 90% their money the whole time, you know, and I slowly was like buying back shares of the company, but I only owned 15% at the max. So yeah, it was yeah, definitely like putting the investors first, because I did have this fiduciary duty to them after accepting money from somebody that you technically like need to put them first.